The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. Marcus Aurelius. This is the moment they feel it. The last text was the last chance. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing at a train platform. For months, a late train kept promising it was almost there. You waited, paced, checked the clock, and believed the announcements. But tonight, a different sound fills the station. Silence. No more promises, no more delays. The doors don't open because the train isn't coming, and you finally step away from the yellow line. That's what the last text really is. Not drama, not revenge, but a platform you stop sleeping on. You choose the road under your own feet, and guess what? The road actually moves. We've been sold a lie, my friends, that if you care, you must chase. If you're strong, you must explain. If you want love, you must keep proving you deserve it. No, love without respect is just noise with perfume. Peace without boundaries is a deal where you pay and they collect. Seneca said, "Life is long if you know how to use it." Every time you begged for clarity that never came, you were using your life to fuel someone else's indecision. That's not compassion, that's self-abandonment dressed as patience, and we're done with that costume party. Picture your attention like electricity. You can power a lighthouse, or you can power a slot machine. One guides ships home, the other eats coins and calls it excitement. When you sent the last text, you pulled the plug on the machine. You stopped funding chaos. That's not cold, that's kind to yourself. And a little fun truth, even your Wi-Fi knows when to disconnect from a weak signal. You're allowed to be at least as smart as your router. Here's another metaphor to keep it plain. Your life is a gym. Every rep builds or burns. If their pattern is come close, push away, come close, push away, they're not training with you. They're tossing plates around for the sound. You're not the background music to somebody else's workout montage. You're the lifter. You set the form. You choose the weight. You choose the spotter. And if they can't lift respect, they don't touch the bar. I know the hard part, the quiet after that last message can feel like winter, but winter is when roots grow deep. That's when discipline turns into strength you can't fake on a highlight reel. Epictetus taught us, you control your opinions, your choices, your actions. You can't control their replies. You can control your standard. And standards aren't walls, they're doors with passwords. Honesty, reciprocity, consistency. If they don't know the code, they don't come in. Simple English, simple rules. Let's break the biggest lie right now. If I stop texting, I'll lose them. My friends, if you lose someone by respecting yourself, you didn't lose a person, you lost a problem. And the moment you stop renting your energy to confusion, you suddenly have capital for purpose. Your health, your craft, your faith, your people. Peace isn't boring. Peace is premium. It's the quiet room where great lives get built. So stay with me. We're going to make this practical. We're going to make it honest. And yes, we're going to make it a little bit fun, because laughing at what used to break you is a victory, not a sin. You didn't ghost them. You graduated. From chasing, from explaining, from needing the person who needed you unsure. And the diploma is simple. A calm life that doesn't apologize for its boundaries. Type "I choose peace" in the comments to lock it in. Hit like and subscribe for more Stoic, steady power. Stay with me. 1. The shock of finality. When a message becomes a mirror. Sometimes silence is the loudest scream. There comes a moment when a message stops being communication and turns into a mirror. When they look at that last text, it doesn't just show your words, it shows their reflection. The reflection of what they did, what they ignored, what they thought would always wait for them. It's strange how finality works. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or shouting matches. It slips in quietly, like the last breath of a candle before darkness claims the room. One moment, there's light, familiar, warm, maybe even taken for granted. The next, only silence remains. Imagine a hallway where doors once led to conversations, explanations, chances. They walk down it expecting another door to open, but this time it's sealed. No sound behind it, no movement under the crack, just stillness. That's when it hits them. The last text wasn't a cliffhanger, it was closed. But the mind resists that truth, doesn't it? They start asking themselves questions they never asked when they had access. Are they serious this time? Why haven't they said anything? Did I go too far? Fear sets in because silence doesn't offer a script to follow. You can argue with words, you can decode tone, but you can't argue with absence. Absence just stares back. See, folks, people often think they want peace until peace means losing control. They think silence is easy until it starts echoing. When you stop explaining, defending, chasing, it forces them to sit in a room filled with their own decisions. And for the first time, they have to listen to themselves without your calm voice covering the noise. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That's the test right here, because what they're feeling now isn't punishment, it's perception. They thought they could play with your consistency forever, that your patience was infinite. But now your absence teaches what your presence could not. Your final text was not just the end of a conversation, it was the beginning of their accountability. Think of it like music, my friends. When the sound stops, you finally notice the silence underneath it. That silence was always there, you just couldn't hear it through the noise. The silence after the last text is that same kind of awareness. It's not just quiet, it's the truth. It's the realization that every maybe later, every not right now, every you're too emotional wasn't power, it was avoidance. And avoidance always catches up. But why is it so difficult for them to face? Because endings feel like rejection, when in reality they're revelation. They reveal who can stand alone and who depends on distraction to feel alive. They reveal who loved with intention and who loved for attention. And when your energy disappears, the truth stands naked. It's not that they lost you, it's that they finally see what you carried and they don't know how to rebuild it. You might think, why do I feel guilty for walking away? Because you were conditioned to think peace requires permission. You were taught to explain your boundaries, to justify your silence, to soften your power, so no one calls it pride. But the truth is, walking away isn't pride, it's preservation. You can't heal in the same room where you were broken. You can't grow in soil that refuses to nourish you. Let me tell you this, there's nothing cruel about protecting your peace. There's nothing unkind about choosing calm over chaos. The world will call you cold for choosing yourself, but that's because they're addicted to warmth that burns. You didn't stop caring, you stopped bleeding, you stopped offering your heart to those who mistook it for a pillow. Seneca once said, "He who is brave is free," and that's what this moment is about. Freedom. Freedom from loops that never end, from apologies that never mean change, from the hope that keeps you hostage. The last text was your quiet declaration, "I am done teaching people how to treat me." Now, some of you watching might still be in that hallway, waiting for a door to open, wondering if the silence is a test or a trap. Let me tell you, silence is neither. It's true. And truth, when embraced, doesn't chase. It creates gravity. So when they finally realize the last text was the last chance, it's not your job to fix their understanding. It's their turn to face the mirror you left behind. You already gave them the words, the patience, the consistency. The rest belongs to their conscience. And here's the beauty. When you stop fighting for closure, the world opens new doors that don't require begging to be opened. You start walking lighter. You start living truer. And your silence turns from a wound into a weapon of wisdom. Write this in the comments, my friends. I choose peace over noise. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that silence isn't weakness, it's mastery. And stay with me, because what comes next will teach you how to hold that peace when the noise tries to come back. 2. Relief, denial, and the calendar, how silence turns into evidence. Time reveals the truth. Silence only makes it louder. At first, they feel relieved. That small voice in their mind says, finally, it's quiet. No more heavy texts, no emotional paragraphs, no reminders that they were drifting away. For a few days, it almost feels like freedom. They convince themselves that this space was necessary, that they needed a break from the tension. But here's what they forget. Peace earned by avoidance isn't peace, it's pause. And pause always ends. Imagine standing in a quiet room right after a storm. The floor is wet, the air heavy, the walls humming with leftover thunder. For a moment it feels peaceful, but only because the damage hasn't been inspected yet. That's what the relief feels like. Temporary calm before reality knocks on the door. As the days stretch, that silence they called freedom begins to feel like distance. They start checking their phone a little too often. They scroll through conversations, not to read them, but to remember what consistency felt like. They start wondering, did I push too hard? Did I go too far? The ego resists at first. It says, they'll text first, they always do. But time has a way of stripping away lies. When the phone stays silent, the truth gets louder. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You will find peace not by escaping your problems, but by confronting them with reason." But most people run from that confrontation because silence leaves no distractions. It's hard to face the reflection of your own actions when the mirror stops fogging. They thought your silence was a strategy. It wasn't. It was surrender to truth, to reality, to peace. The denial starts creeping in next. They make excuses. They're probably busy. Maybe their phone's broken. Funny how imagination works best when it's trying to protect pride. But denial has an expiration date, and every tick of the clock is a reminder that reality doesn't need your permission to arrive. The calendar becomes evidence. Day 1 felt like strength. Day 5 felt like space. By day 10, it feels like a consequence. And here's what really burns. They realize your silence isn't waiting. It's moving on. You're not playing the game anymore. You've stopped checking their updates, stopped wondering about their moods, stopped trying to translate mixed signals into meaning. You're building peace while they're building anxiety. You see, the moment you stopped responding wasn't rebellion, it was rebirth. You didn't cut them off, you cut yourself free. Think of it like a fire, my friends. You used to stand close enough to keep them warm, even when they didn't feed the flame. Every time they walked away, you added more wood just to keep it burning. But now the fire's gone out, not from anger, but from exhaustion. And here's the truth most can't accept. When the firekeeper leaves, the cold teaches faster than words ever could. They begin to replay your old texts, the ones they skimmed, the ones they ignored. Suddenly, every word carries new weight. That "take care" doesn't sound casual anymore. That "I just want peace" sounds prophetic. The texts they once saw as emotional now read like wisdom, because distance changes perception. What once felt ordinary now feels rare. And that's where fear walks in. Not the kind that makes you panic, but the kind that whispers at night, You might have lost something real. They start remembering how you stayed calm when things got messy, how you listened instead of attacked, how you kept showing up even when it wasn't convenient. They start realizing the value of the peace they dismissed as boring. And that's the danger of your silence. It turns your calm into contrast. Every new conversation reminds them what they lost: stability, depth, presence. Seneca said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." And that's what happens here. The longer the silence lasts, the more their mind fills it with stories. Stories about what you're doing, who you've become, whether you still think about them. But you've already moved from thinking to living. You're not waiting by the phone. You're in the gym, in your work, in your growth, in your purpose. You replaced confusion with consistency. And that's what terrifies them, because the power shifted quietly. You didn't announce it. You didn't post a quote or write a speech. You simply chose yourself. And in doing so, you taught them the hardest truth of all. Sometimes the one who goes silent is not weak. They're just done negotiating with noise. But I know what you're thinking, my friends. If I was so strong, why do I still think about them sometimes? Because healing doesn't erase humanity. You can miss someone and still move forward. You can remember the good and still release the bad. The goal isn't to stop feeling, it's to stop being controlled by what you feel. That's real Stoic strength. So here's your reminder. Your silence is not empty. It's evidence. Evidence that you learned to protect your time, your energy, your peace. It's proof that you've stopped giving discounts on your value. You've become calm in a world that confuses chaos for connection. Write this in the comments, my friends. I choose calm over confusion. Show them, show yourself, and show the world that your silence isn't running away. It's standing tall. Stay with me, because what comes next will dive even deeper into how silence becomes the mirror they can't escape. 3. The echo. Why absence starts to feel like presence. Your silence will teach them what your words never could. At first, silence feels like distance, but give it time and you'll see. It becomes a presence, a strange, haunting kind of presence that follows them everywhere they go. It's like a song that used to play softly in the background, the one they never paid attention to until it stopped. And now, the absence of that sound rings louder than the music ever did. They scroll through their messages again, not to respond, not to talk, but to feel. Every line you once wrote, every gentle reminder, every patient "it's okay" carries a different weight now. The same words that used to annoy them for being too emotional now sound like guidance. The same consistency they dismissed as predictable now feels like peace they can't recreate. That's what silence does. It distorts time. It turns yesterday's ordinary moments into today's lessons. Imagine walking through a house after everyone's gone. The chairs are still there. The pictures still hang on the walls. But something feels missing. That something isn't physical. It's presence. It's the quiet gravity of energy that used to fill the room. That's what your silence has become. It's not an absence. It's a reminder of the weight your presence once carried. They start noticing the small things first. The lack of your morning text, the absence of that late-night check-in, the way their phone stays still for hours. It's not about missing your words. It's about missing what your attention represents. Safety grounding, direction. In a world full of noise, you were silent. That made sense. And now that silence exposes everything else for what it is, temporary. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." That's what happens here. your silence begins to color their thoughts. It forces reflection. The mind starts replaying old choices like reruns of a show that once felt predictable but now seems full of meaning. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe they were right. Maybe they cared more than I thought. Those are the echoes. They grow louder the longer you stay quiet. And here's the thing about echoes. They don't just remind, they reveal. They show who was truly present in the relationship and who was simply performing connection. When the steady voice leaves the room, all the pretending collapses. Suddenly, they realize it wasn't just what you said, it was how you made silence feel safe. You listened when others only waited to talk. You cared without keeping score. You brought calm where chaos usually ruled. And now that calm has turned into a haunting absence. My friends, people always notice peace after they've replaced it with noise. It's like drinking salt water. It looks refreshing, it feels exciting at first, but it leaves you thirstier than before. They chased stimulation, thinking it was freedom, but your silence reveals the cost. Because freedom without emotional control isn't peace, it's panic in disguise. They'll try to fill the void, new chats, new distractions, new people, but none of it feels the same. Every new conversation feels shallow because they're not connecting, they're compensating. It's like switching from a slow-burning candle to flashing neon lights. It catches the eye, but blinds the heart. Your silence, on the other hand, is steady. It doesn't perform. It doesn't beg for attention. It simply exists, and that existence becomes magnetic. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." They wasted yours, not because they didn't have time, but because they thought they had endless chances. And now they're realizing what you already learned. Energy is the most expensive currency in the world, and you stopped giving discounts. But let's talk about you for a second. You may still feel the temptation to break the silence, to check if they've changed, to see if they miss you. It's human. But remember, your silence isn't punishment, it's preservation. It's not about pride, it's about peace. When you stay quiet, you're not ignoring them. You're investing in yourself. You're turning the noise of the past into the soundtrack of your discipline. It's not easy, I know. There will be nights where your mind whispers, maybe they finally understand now. But understanding doesn't always mean returning. Sometimes the lesson was never meant to bring them back. It was meant to bring you forward. You didn't lose them. You lost the need to explain yourself to someone who refused to listen. That's not a loss, it's liberation. So if you ever wonder whether your silence matters, look at their restlessness. Look at the way they hover between curiosity and regret. Look at how they can't fully let go, because the absence you left isn't emptiness. It's a mirror, and every time they look into it, they see their own reflection staring back with one question: why didn't I value peace when I had it? Stay grounded in that truth, because your silence is not a gap, it's a message that says, my energy is sacred, my attention is earned, my peace is mine. You are not being cold, you're being calculated. You're not running from them, you're running toward yourself. Write this in the comments, my friends. I choose presence over performance. Let it be your declaration. Show them, show yourself, and show the world around you that silence isn't emptiness. It's evidence of mastery. And stay with me, because next we're going to break down how peace starts to shift the balance when comparison enters the picture. That's when your absence stops being quiet and starts becoming magnetic. 4. The comparison effect. Peace versus performance. Peace is not the absence of chaos, it's the presence of control. It always starts the same way. When the silence sets in, they go looking for noise to fill it. New conversations, new faces, new excitement. They tell themselves they're moving on, that they've outgrown what you had, that this next person will be different. But here's the truth. They're not looking for someone new. They're looking for you in someone new. They're looking for that calm energy you carried, that quiet steadiness that made everything feel anchored, and when they can't find it, comparison begins. You see, my friends, peace doesn't shout, it doesn't post, it doesn't perform, it simply exists. But performance? It's exhausting, it's loud because it's empty, and that's what they begin to realize when the initial thrill of distraction wears off. The people they meet might talk more, joke more, promise more, but none of them feel like you. Because what you offered wasn't performance, it was presence. Imagine walking into a room full of mirrors. Every reflection looks like light, but none of them are real. That's what it feels like for them now. They're surrounded by reflections of energy, not the source. Everyone talks, nobody listens. Everyone shines, nobody grounds. And in that hollow brightness, they begin to crave your shade. Because your peace wasn't a performance, it was a posture. You didn't need to be the loudest to be felt. You were stillness in a world addicted to reaction. At first, they might try to deny it. They'll tell themselves, "I'm fine, I've moved on." But the mind doesn't lie for long. Every conversation they have becomes a subtle comparison test. Every laugh that feels forced, every deep talk that feels surface level, every promise that lacks weight, it all reminds them of what they lost. That's how peace becomes magnetic. It exposes chaos by contrast. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look." You became that source, and they can't replicate it because it didn't come from words. It came from self-control. You don't need validation to act with value. You didn't need drama to feel alive. You weren't reacting, you were responding. That kind of emotional balance is rare, my friends, and rarity always rises in value after it's gone. Think of it like music again. You were jazz, smooth, controlled, intentional. The new energy they're chasing, it's noise, fast beats, no melody, no message. It fills the room but empties the soul. They thought your calm was boring, but now they see that peace doesn't entertain, it endures. Because peace isn't something you listen to, it's something you feel. They might try to convince themselves that the next person is better, louder, more fun. But deep down, they're chasing the same feeling your steadiness gave them. And here's the truth. They can't find it because it doesn't come from attention. It comes from alignment. You can't replicate someone who's mastered self-control. That's why your silence still echoes in their mind. Because it wasn't about the noise you made, it was about the balance you brought. Now let's be honest, comparison works both ways. You'll have moments when you think, do they miss me? Are they happier now? That's the ego trying to pull you back into old patterns. But listen carefully, peace doesn't compete. Peace doesn't chase validation through winning. When you operate from peace, you're not asking, did I matter? You're saying, I learned. Seneca said, he who is brave is free. And freedom doesn't measure itself against other people. It measures itself against yesterday's version of you. The moment you stop comparing, you start healing. Because comparison is the thief of both gratitude and growth. You're not here to prove you were better. You're here to become better. Quietly, consistently. They'll feel that shift too. They'll notice that your energy no longer bends toward them, that your silence isn't a pause, it's a boundary, that your attention isn't missing, it's redirected. You're no longer the man or woman waiting by the phone. You're the one building peace brick by brick while they're still searching for mirrors that reflect meaning. And one day, when their newest distraction fades, when the laughter quiets, when they're alone again with their thoughts, They'll remember the way you made calm feel powerful. That's when they'll realize peace was never boring. It was expensive, and you were giving it for free. But don't let their realization pull you back. That's the trap. When you've grown into peace, returning to chaos doesn't feel like love. It feels like regression. Protect your growth, my friends, because your silence has already been spoken. It's already taught them the lesson. What was once taken for granted now stands as the gold standard. So hold your ground, keep moving. Don't respond just to prove a point. Don't speak just to be seen. The universe always brings recognition to the ones who no longer need it. Your calm is your comeback. Your detachment is your declaration. And your silence, it's not distance, it's discipline. Type this in the comments, my friends. I choose peace as power. Let it be your proof that you've evolved beyond comparison. Show them, show yourself, and show the world that when performance fades, peace remains undefeated. Stay with me, because what comes next will reveal the moment they finally test the silence, and how your response, or lack of it, defines everything. 5. The probe when they test the door for one last time. Don't respond to noise with noise. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer. It always happens. Sooner or later, after the silence stretches long enough to make their confidence crack, they test the door. It might start small, a message that seems innocent, maybe even polite. "Hey, how have you been?" Or a reaction to one of your posts, or a memory they suddenly just thought about. But beneath those words isn't care, it's curiosity. They're not reaching out to reconnect, they're reaching out to confirm that the door is still open. They want to see if the silence they once ignored is still revolving around them, or if it's now orbiting somewhere else. Imagine a thief returning to the house they once stole from, not to steal again, but just to see if the locks have changed. That's what this is, a test. They want to know if you'll answer like before, if your emotions still dance to their rhythm, if your boundaries were just a temporary performance or a permanent transformation. And that's where most people fail. They open the door out of habit, not realization. They tell themselves, it's just a message. What's the harm? But my friends, harm doesn't come in big moments. It comes in small cracks. That one reply, that one laugh at a half-hearted joke, that one attempt to prove you're over it. That's how energy leaks. That's how peace gets traded for nostalgia. Stoicism teaches us that self-control isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about mastering response. You can feel the tug without moving your feet. You can recognize the test without sitting for the exam. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's your weapon right there. They might be trying to measure your silence, but your silence was never about them. It was about you. You didn't go quiet to play a game. You went quiet to stop being played. You stopped chasing what runs, stopped explaining what refuses to listen, stopped pouring into a cup that had a hole at the bottom. Let's be honest, it's tempting to respond. The mind whispers, maybe they've changed. Maybe they finally understand. But the truth is, if they truly understood, they wouldn't test the silence. They'd respect it. A real apology doesn't come as curiosity. It comes as accountability. But accountability takes courage. And courage is rare in people who feed on comfort. Imagine standing in front of a door you once walked through every day. It's familiar, the smell, the colors, the memories. But now it's locked, and behind it is everything you outgrew. That's what your silence represents. A door you closed not from hate, but from healing. And now, they're knocking, not because they want to rebuild, but because they can't stand the echo of their own actions. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. That's what this test is, a chance for you to prove yourself, to prove that your peace wasn't performance, that your detachment isn't disguise, it's discipline. You are not avoiding the storm, you've simply learned to walk above it. And here's the hard truth, they might not even know why they're reaching out. Their ego drives them to check if they still have control, because silence is a mirror that reveals loss of influence. When they send that message, they're really asking, do I still matter? And your calm, your stillness, your non-reaction, that's your answer. Because nothing terrifies someone who once had access, like realizing they no longer affect your weather. Think of your peace as a castle, my friends. It took time to build, brick by brick, lesson by lesson. Every apology you accepted, every chance you gave, every moment you chose forgiveness over pride, that was construction. And now that you've built something strong, do you really want to hand the keys back to the one who left the door open in the rain? This is where the power of silence becomes sacred. You're not ignoring them to prove a point. You're protecting progress. You don't owe closure to those who opened wounds. You don't owe attention to those who drained it. The world will call you cold, but remember, ice is just water that learned to control its temperature. And if you do respond, let it be from composure, not curiosity. Speak like someone who's not trying to win, because you already have. You won the moment you stopped letting temporary people disrupt your permanent peace. Whether you reply or remain silent doesn't matter. What matters is why you choose either, because that's what separates reaction from mastery. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." So don't mirror the chaos, magnify the calm. Don't explain your silence, embody it. When they test the door, let them find it locked, not with bitterness, but with grace. Because maturity isn't saying you can't come in, it's saying you no longer need to. And when the test passes, when they walk away again confused, trying to figure out how you became so calm, let them wonder. Let your peace haunt their restlessness. You've become the kind of person they can't argue with, because silence can't be debated. Write this in the comments, my friends. I protect my peace first. Let it be your declaration. Show them, show yourself, and show the world around you that your silence isn't avoidance, it's evolution. Stay with me, because what comes next will reveal the deeper truth, how your silence becomes a standard, not a punishment, and why that standard is the foundation of your new identity. 6. Boundaries, not punishment. Your silence as a standard. Whatever you tolerate, you teach. Boundaries, that's where everything changes. Most people mistake them for walls, when really they're doors with locks that only open for respect. But when you finally build them, when you stop allowing easy access to your peace, people call it punishment. They'll say you've become distant, cold, or selfish. But what they're really saying is, you've stopped letting me break your peace without consequence. At first, they don't understand it, because your silence doesn't come with anger. It comes with stillness. It's not loud enough to fight, but it's firm enough to teach. They knock, expecting the old version of you to answer, the one who always explained, forgave, and overextended. But this time, there's no response, no essays, no emotional weather report, just stillness, the kind of silence that forces reflection. Imagine your peace as a home. You spent years decorating it with patience, kindness, forgiveness, and understanding. Every room is furnished with your effort, every wall painted with your time. But some people treated it like a hotel, checking in when convenient, leaving messes for you to clean. And when you finally changed the locks, they called you rude. That's how the world reacts when you stop offering free stays in spaces you built with sweat. Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That's the foundation of a boundary, doing what's right for your peace, not what's comfortable for others. Your silence isn't an attack, it's alignment. It's you saying, I no longer participate in what disturbs my balance. You're not punishing anyone. You're protecting the version of yourself that had to suffer to learn where peace lives. They'll test it, of course. They always do. They'll throw guilt your way. You've changed. You don't care anymore. But that's just noise trying to disguise loss of control. You haven't changed. You've evolved. You've simply reached a point where access to you is earned, not assumed. You realize that not everyone deserves to hear your side of the story. Not everyone should have the privilege of your patience, and not every misunderstanding deserves a response. My friends, it's not your job to make everyone comfortable at the expense of your sanity. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They're the blueprint of respect. They tell the world how to treat you without you saying a single word. And your silence? That's the signature on that blueprint. You're teaching through absence what you once tried to teach through explanation. Think of a river. It doesn't argue with rocks. It flows around them. That's how boundaries work. They don't fight for validation. They redirect energy toward clarity. You're not forcing anyone to leave. You're simply refusing to stay in places where peace must beg to exist. And that shift is terrifying for those who thrived on your old softness, because your silence removes the supply, the emotional energy they used to feed on. Seneca once said, "No man can have a peaceful life who thinks too much about lengthening it or who is over-anxious about it." Boundaries are the same. When you start guarding peace, you stop begging for longevity in places meant for lessons. You start letting endings happen without resistance. Because a boundary is not about who you push away, it's about who you invite in. And here's what's beautiful. You start to attract people who understand the quiet. People who don't see your calm as disinterest, but as maturity. People who don't take your space personally because they have space of their own. That's when you realize you didn't build walls, you built standards, and standards filter out chaos faster than words ever could. But I know it's not easy. Sometimes silence feels heavy. You'll have moments where your heart whispers, maybe I should just explain myself one more time. But that's the trap, because the people who truly value you don't need explanations. And the ones who don't value you won't understand them anyway. You have to remember, your peace is sacred ground. Every time you let someone trample it, you teach them it's okay. Every time you let disrespect slide, you set a lower price on your worth. But when you go silent, when you stop entertaining chaos, you send a message the world never forgets. Access to me is a privilege, not a right. This is the new chapter of your life, where silence becomes your statement, boundaries become your language, and peace becomes your brand. You no longer need to prove you're kind. You just refuse to let anyone confuse kindness with weakness. You no longer need to show your loyalty. You just give it where it's reciprocated. And you no longer need to shout your worth. You live it quietly, consistently, and completely. Write this in the comments, my friends. I protect my peace proudly. Let the world see that your silence is not retreat. It's refinement. Show them, show yourself, and show the world around you that the calm you now carry wasn't born from luck. It was built through discipline. Thank you for watching.